College football is getting ready to change again. We don't know what the unintended consequences of this one's going to be yet, but we've seen college football move around its National Signing Day, and that's what's happening again. So today, Thursday, college football's National Signing Day has been moved. So instead of in the middle of December or just before Christmas, so our wives cannot scream at us as much. Now it's the week of the conference championship games. So Georgia will play Georgia Tech on Saturday, and I believe it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after that. The programs. Well, no, it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of those weeks will be signing day, the early signing day. So essentially that Wednesday, that's when it traditionally is. So my understanding is this is the early signing day. Now, is this going to make things better or not? Let's just talk through it for a second here and try to figure out what the repercussions of this will be, the unintended consequences of it. There's a lot of folks in college football that feel like this will make college coaches get fired quicker, earlier in the season. That's certainly possible. I mean, when you start talking about the early signing period being moved to the week of championship, that means coaches are going to get fired, and you're going to want your coach in place essentially at Thanksgiving. Like that, the week of Thanksgiving, so rivalry week, that's going to be a busier and busier week. What we don't know right now is if rivalry week will stay intact as it is. My suspicion is that for the foreseeable future it will. Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia Tech, the Gators and Knowles, etc. There's no real movement to have those games change from that week. What I don't know yet though is if you say, let's just say you're Kirby Smart, would you rather deal with the chaos of perhaps losing a staff member the week of the conference championship game, or would you rather lose that person during your build towards the playoff? I think a lot of folks too, like Texas A&M, for instance, this past year, you saw a change there at their head coaching spot. Teams, the top 12 teams, probably the top 20-ish teams, you're going to see more folks delay their firings at the top of college football. So, if you're getting in the playoff, you don't have anything to worry about. If your program is firing your coach, man, listen, it doesn't matter. You just got to do it. Like Florida, it is not out of the realm of possibility that Billy is fired the day after they play Georgia, and that's it. So they'll take their lumps. They'll try to get Lane Kiffin to come to Gainesville. I don't know. That's who I would suspect they'll go after, but that will of course then wreak havoc on Ole Miss's situation, and on down the line. There's no perfect way to do this. When we moved signing day to an early signing period because so many guys were enrolling early anyway, that changed the calendar dramatically. Signing day, as a person who lived through the .com wars, in that time, in that world, in that period, that was an important moment in time. February was like a huge selling time. It was a big, signing day gets lost right now. I mean, no one thinks about signing day. I can tell you the traffic numbers are not at all what they used to be. And I don't think that this will solve that dilemma for the .coms. But the .coms have become such, a parade of stupidity half the time anyway with signing day. Although not maybe as much as in the past. It's a lot of that, though. I think for college football, we can't make December insane. And right now it is. Right now, with what we just experienced, we cannot have a 12-team playoff and have what we just, and leave signing day where it's at. That's not going to work. So that's been adjusted. That's a good thing. However, I will say it seems to me like it makes sense to me to have a signing period in August. Now, a lot of people say, well, That's you're only getting to see guys through their junior year. Look, in big time college football, that's what it is anyway. And you can have the February signing period too. But um, this is about as good as you're going to get to avoid the season but get close to the season. College football with early enrollees, with the transfer portal, there's two. With departures for the NFL, it's too complicated to do the math. If you're Georgia, if you're Bama, if you're Clemson, Clemson doesn't do the transfer portal. If you're Georgia, if you're LSU, if you're Bama, if you're Michigan, if you're Ohio State, you're going to attract guys. Like, you don't need to be concerned. If you're Kentucky, if you're Mississippi State, or maybe even Ole Miss, this could affect you in a real negative way because you're not going to know sort of how to. I mean, who's leaving and who's not, like that. That's the hard part, and then attracting guys. That's going to be a hard part too. All of this is tricky. Whenever you change something, but y'all, the middle of December, like week before Christmas, a few days before Christmas, signing day, that's a total non-starter. Now, with that said, if the calendar were the way it is now, Dylan Raiola would be at Georgia, period. It may also force guys to make decisions quicker. Am I doing this? Am I going to this school? What do they have to offer in terms of NIL? What do they have to offer in terms of, playing time? What do they have to offer in terms of all this different stuff? That's going to become accelerated as well. But, I mean, what I worry about, if you want to, I don't worry about it necessarily. I mean, I worry about me. I worry about what are we going to have to do that week. We're going to have signing day 3 days before, the SEC championship game. That's going to be tough. That's going to be a challenging thing for us as an organization to deal with because, the good thing, I will say this about signing day. It would be good to have signing day matter again to some degree. Right now, it just doesn't matter. And it's not mattered since before COVID. Now, I understand COVID changed the way we do a lot of stuff, but it's sort of just like the marker. I don't remember, after that, there being a signing day nationally without like everybody was going, wow. Do you remember when Brent Cox, Cade Mays, all those guys signed with Georgia? I think that was the 18 class. That was an amazing signing day. And I was at, oh man, I can't remember his name. He signed with Alabama, the running back. When Nakobe Dean, it was Nakobe. We were at that in Mississippi. I was in the Panhandle of Florida, covering a running back that went on to go to play at Alabama over Georgia. Nakobe picked Georgia over, I guess, Ole Miss and Bama. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what that was. But that was sort of the last hurrah of signing days mattering because the 20 class, well, I don't remember a lot about that class, and I may be describing the 20 class, but for the record, but I don't think I am. But all of those were exciting signing days. That's gone in college football. I mean, it just doesn't matter like it used to. Part of it's because February is gone away, and you had a natural way to land the plane if you were a coach that had just gotten to a new school. There's no margin of error now. There's no margin of error. But I will say this, just like Don Draper said, that's what the money's for. Hey man, you're there to pull the rabbit out of the hat right at the end. I mean, when you think back, now Kirby had 4 weeks. He had about 7 weeks to get it right. He was introduced on the 9th. No, let's see. So Kirby was introduced on like the 7th or something like that. And then, he had basically 2 months to nail down his group. But the vast majority of that group in the 2-month period, they were all signing early. So like Jacob, Mecole, I think Mecole's on it. Jacob, Isaac Nada for sure, Ben Cleveland, all those guys, those guys were all early guys. Jacob particularly. So he had to get it done quick. And that was a top 8 class, maybe a top 7 class. So it wasn't unbelievable by his stretch, but he still nailed down a top 10 class in a matter of, really 2-3 weeks. Now you're going to have to do that in a couple of days. And you probably, if you're firing your coach, you're flushing that class down the toilet. But that's usually what happens. Usually. From that point forward, the 16 class. So Kirby got there in December of 15. The 16 class at Georgia was Jacob and Rochester and Ben Cleveland, all those guys. It was 17, and then 17, 18, 19. That was a group where Georgia, played for the national championship with those guys, and of course, some of the guys from the 14 class too. And then they won the national championship with the 18, 19, 20 classes. So, and I suppose, 18, 19, 20, 21 classes. So that would include Brock Bowers. So like N'Kobe, Trayvon Walker, Jalen Carter, guys like that. Those guys were all. It took a little bit of a running start, but it takes time. It does take years to get where you got to go in recruiting. So we'll just see how this goes. I don't know what the unintended consequences are. If it's that coaches get fired earlier, I don't care about that. That's just part of college football now. Coaches just get fired in the middle of the season, and that could mean that people want more buyout protection. But y'all, just not to be too much like this, there's supply and demand in the marketplace. If you are in demand, then the money's there. If you're not in demand, people aren't going to care. There's in addition, there's only so much money to go around. Everybody keeps talking about, these huge the TV contracts, like the SEC's kind of locked in where they're at for a while. The Big Ten's just done their contract. Like there's money coming into the SEC, but they knew that. That's money that's come in, or they knew it was coming. There's not a lot of new money, like ground changing money. So the coaching, it's going to go higher, but we're not close to a $20 million contract for the top 10 coaches. That's not right around the corner. So these buyouts, a lot of people I talk to, they don't think the buyout game is going to get better for the coaches because, you look at the ACC, their contract has not changed. You look at the Big 10, the Big 12, Pac-12, those situations for those schools, those have not gotten appreciably better. The Big 10, sure. But in the SEC, but that's not the entire marketplace. That's just those places. And let's be honest, South Carolina's not going to pay what Georgia pays. State's not going to pay what Georgia or Florida or, LSU pays. So we're still talking about limited market. And, the next, James Franklin's going to get fired at some point. And that buyout is going to really handcuff Penn State. So all of this stuff that we're talking about, all of the machinations, it all comes from the TV contracts. And everybody's gotten their bump. And it's not coming again soon. So I wouldn't get over worried about some of these things. I think coaches are still just going to get fired. Buyouts going higher. We'll see. The coaches, they have some say, but the schools, they're not. The schools, as it relates to football contracts, the schools do a terrible job. I will say that.